And we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're a little bit early for Every Point's a Winner, episode number 40. We've got this far, and we're looking forward to another 5 or 6 rounds. What is it? Next round is 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. We've only got 5 rounds left. Interesting. Peter Connors made a big charge in our Monster Tipping Cup, so well done, Pete. He grabbed 3 points off Scotty and myself, and I won't be tipping Cowboys again for the rest of the season on that performance. But Cronulla certainly got a lot of decisions going their way, but their defence was awful. I looked at most of the game all this afternoon, the extended replays. Didn't quite have enough time to watch all the I heard all the games live on the radio, so I painted a pretty good picture in my head. The conditions were horrendous for most of the rounds. The only good field, I think, was the Gold Coast Penrith game, and it wasn't that a cracker. A piece of magic there again from Nathan Cleary to win it, basically to push it into extra time. How the Cowboys, how the Titans came back was amazing. 24-0 at halftime, was it not? But we'll check all those stats very shortly. A couple of bad injuries, one to Herbie Farnworth, and that was on the Friday match, I believe. But let's have a look here. We'll go straight into our stats because we're going to find out how your side went and how the stats piled up against them. And we'll see going forward once we have a look at the ladder, and also we might have a quick look at that injury list. Some players will be out for the season. Let's have a look at the NRL website. The first game was the Thursday night. It was Parramatta 10. To my dismay, Melbourne 16. I usually wouldn't have tipped against Storm, but I had a feeling Parramatta would play a very, very good game. According to Scotty, it was always going to be 13 plus. Well, he got that wrong. Anyway, 6 points in it at the end, and it was at CommBank. And let's have a look at the stats. The try scorers was Josh Adokar in the 24th minute. The first try scorer, Elise Katoa, so we're pretty all right there with the try scorers. 44-minute, Charlie Geimer. Tui Kamakamika, we did not have him in our ATTS, but we did have Xavier Coates in the 69th minute. Unfortunately, the guy we stood out did not show up, and for Parramatta. But in any case, Charlie Geimer, I don't think we would have ever entertained Charlie, but well done, mate. It was an interesting game. At halftime, it was 10-4 to the Melbourne Storm. The penalty goals was 1-1. It was actually penalty goals was 0 from 2 for Pappenhausen. He didn't have a great kicking game, and 1 from 1 there for the Parramatta Eels. Let's have a look and see. So it was 3 tries to 2, so you could honestly argue that the best side won. The possession was 54% to 46 to the Storm. All runs made is 1,700, a lot more there, an extra 300 metres there to the Storm over Parramatta. Kicks 28 to 16. You can expect that from having Munster on the field. Most tackles here, Jamie Hopgood, 40. He dropped the ball a couple of times, which led to a lot of pressure on Parramatta. So he had a hot and cold game, good in defence, but no good in attack. Harry Grant, yet again, outstanding in defence. He usually is one of the top tacklers, 37 there. Zach Lomax, most run metres, 184 for Parramatta and 200 for Ryan Pappenhausen, only settling back from his injury. Josh Adokar, most line breaks 2, and Chukwuemeka the one which led to the try. Okay, let's go across to team stats and see the vital statistics here. So the possession rate, as you knew, the completion rate, 68%, not that much from Parramatta, 84, outstanding for Melbourne. We already went through the runs meters, the post-contact meters, wow, 685 and for Melbourne and 527 for Parramatta. Line breaks surprisingly 4 to Parramatta, but they just couldn't complete at the end. They couldn't break that defence, and 1 line break for the Storm there. Tackle breaks 40. Wow, tackle breaks 40 Melbourne and only 18 Parramatta. That's a shocking statistic for Coach Riles there to have a look at. Average set distance, 37 metres, another 3 metres more to the Storm there over Parramatta. Kick return metres, fairly similar, 186 to 163 for Parramatta. And offloads, 6 to 4. Receipts were fairly standard for both of them. A lot more drop ball, though, for Parramatta. Total passes, 239. A lot more passes there from Parramatta. They were throwing it around. Dummy passes, surprisingly, 31 to Parramatta, 14 to Storm. And the kicks, as you knew, were 28 to 16. Kick defusal, only 50% Parramatta, 100% Melbourne. That's a big stat favouring them. Bombs 6 to 4 to Parramatta. Yeah, pretty good, fairly good kicking game, but not as good as the week before for Moses there. Effective tackles, 94% Melbourne and only 88% there for the Parramatta Eels. Missed tackles, now here's the big stat that destroyed Parramatta, 40 missed tackles as opposed to 18 for Melbourne Storm. Ineffective tackles were bad as well, 12 to Parramatta, 5 to the Storm. Negative plays were shocking for Parramatta. That's errors, 14 negative play errors, 14 to 7. Parramatta over Melbourne there. Penalties conceded fairly high for Melbourne, 10 to 7 over Parramatta, and ruck infringements 2 to 0. Nothing else we need to know there. All the interchanges were used, and there's a couple of bad stats there leading towards the victory for Melbourne Storm, and Parramatta were lucky they didn't get beaten by more. According to those stats, they scrambled quite well, but they needed to have that extra edge. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something, and I truly believe this. Leaving Dylan Brown out of the side, for me, is a mistake because he's got that edge. He's got that attacking flair that they're missing. And I really think him working alongside of Moses was probably the reason why they didn't win that game. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. What's your personal opinion? I think it was the stats that led up there, the all ball handling and basically missing that attacking edge with Dylan Brown. So anyway, we know he's going to Newcastle next year, but they're going to need a little bit more than Dylan Brown with what they're going through at the moment. Let's get on to the next match before we get laboured down too much. And this was a very entertaining match. Very, very entertaining. I thought the Warriors had it won with only a few minutes to go. It was 18 Warriors, 20 Dolphins. They were lucky, honestly. They were very lucky to get away with it. If we click on the match review here, it was 2 to Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. He went over in the 9th and the 35th minute. 1 to Herbie Farnworth until he did his hamstring, and that was devastating for us. Jeremy Marshall-King, 25th minute, and then Oren Keeley on the 29th. Lika Halasem, the 58th, and the final play, literally, in the last 80 seconds, Jermaine Asako, also playing with a bit of an injury with the groin, went over in the 78th minute plus. Conversions was 3 from 3 for Tanner Boyd. He kicked really well, I thought. And only 2 from 4 for Jermaine Osako. Might have had something to do with his groin. I can imagine how much that had hurt with those big legs rubbing near your groin there. Felice Kafusi was sin bin, and now he's going to have a couple of weeks off, I believe, for his. He came in as a third tackler, didn't he? And put one of the Maori fellas into the bin, into the injury. I think he's looking at the injury list. He's also might have a week off from that tackle of Kafusi. All right, let's go and have a look at the top tacklers here. It was Jackson Ford. I thought he was going to go over. We stood him out 2 weeks ago, but he played an outstanding game. 40 tackles there. Kurt Donahue. We were so close to picking up big money, ladies and gentlemen. We had a 3-legger. We had Oren Keeley into the try scorer for the Dolphins, into Kurt Donahue. He missed the try line by a couple of feet. I thought he was over, but instead he played the ball, and going over was Marshall King. I was going to say the hyphenated name. Jerry Marshall King died over. We had another one with Cody Nikorima, but that try was disallowed. Geez, we had some disallowed tries that really killed us for any time try scorers last weekend. But what a game it was. Really, really sad news about Herbie Farnworth. He's been outstanding for every game that Dolphins have played. And the most line breaks here were 3 to Herbie Farnworth. And during that third one, that's when his hamstring went. It was like a racehorse breaking down with a big lead. Not good. And Dylan Watini-Zalesny had 2 breaks and went over twice with those breaks. I thought Kurt Capewell had an outstanding match as well as Kurt Donahue. Cody Nikorima looks like he's not fully stretching out yet. Do you blame him coming back from that hamstring? He's going to be a big asset to them if they make it into the playoffs. At halftime, it was 16 Dolphins leading the Warriors 12. They had some really good moments, the Warriors, but they just couldn't cross when they wanted to. And I thought after losing Herbie Farnworth, I thought the Dolphins were gone, to be honest with you, because he was having a blinder up until that moment in time. Let's have a look at the team stats and see. It's probably going to be fairly even, but we'll have a look at them anyway. Possession here, 48% to 52%. A little bit more there to the Warriors. Time in possession, 30. Looks like 31 minutes. As I said, very even to the Warriors and 28 to Dolphins. Completion rate, 80% Dolphins, 83% Warriors. You couldn't really pick their game apart too that badly. It was just that it seemed as though Dolphins were hungry at the end there. All runs meters, fairly even, another 200 meters there to the Warriors. Post-contact meters, 653 to the Warriors and only 530 to the Dolphins. Line breaks, 9 to the Dolphins. That's going to be a worry for Warriors going forward. That slips them back now closer to having Penrith overtake them. We'll talk about that later. 3 line breaks to Warriors is really not enough. They are missing those vital players, including Luke Metcalf, that created so many of those breaks in the past. Tackle breaks here, fairly even, 46 to 44. That's a lot of tackle breaks when you think about it for both sides. A very attacking match. 46 there in front, Dolphins there. Average set distance, 42 metres to the Dolphins, 44. Very similar stats to the Warriors there. Kick return meters, 236 to the Warriors and only 120 to the Dolphins. Let's have a look here. Kicking, the kicks were 25 to the Warriors and 21 to the Dolphins. Kicking meters, fairly even, another 40 metres there to the Dolphins. Forced dropouts, 2-1 to the Warriors. Kick defusal, only 42% for the Warriors, 67% kick defusal for the Dolphins there. Bombs, 8 bombs to 5. And I think one of them could have led to the Halasima try. He's just a freak. Grubbers there, 4 to the Dolphins. Got a lot to do with Katoa there. And 2 to the Warriors. Defence, 86% to the Dolphins and 85% effective tackles. Or something dropped then. It was 80. That's thrown me off. 85%, so very, very even in defence as far as completion is concerned. Missed tackles, fairly even, both of them. 46 and 44 missed tackles there. Intercepts, 2 to the Warriors, none to the Dolphins. Negative play, the errors here, 11 to the Dolphins and 9 to the Warriors. Penalties conceded, 5 to 6, 6 to the Dolphins. Ruck infringements here, 4 to 2 to the Dolphins, and that's about all she wrote. It could have went either way. That match went right down the wire. It was entertaining, but it's really, really sad news for the Dolphins. And I'm a big Dolphins fan. I'm a big fan of Connolly Lemuelu. I've got him in my black book special, anytime try scorers. But also Herbie Farnworth was in there as well. And I thought Jake Averillo was unlucky the Dolphins didn't win by more. He looked like scoring a couple of times. He's a great, great player, so elusive. And he just seems to be getting better with more maturity and more age and, basically more experience. Let's get on to the next match before we get laboured down anymore. And this was the other Friday night match. I was really cursing that I didn't get home. Went out with Peter's brother-in-law and his wife, and that was always a great experience. I was screaming when Donahue was that far from scoring. I nearly picked up $200 off that 3-leg parlay. But anyway, we had a nice little win from the Dolphins game, thanks to Oren Keeley and the boys. But it was 60 points to 14 here. Broncos over the Rabbitohs. I did stand out Tallis Duncan, as I told you in the tips, and he went over at 9-2, really good value. And we had a couple of the Broncos try scorers as well. Unfortunately, some of the ones that we've had in the past went over several times, including Ezra Mann and Katoni Staggs. Well, he was one of our doubles, Katoni Staggs into Tallis Duncan. So you should have had a win on this, even though I didn't place my bets because I was leaving the restaurant at the time the game kicked off. Okay, so always get your bets on early if you can, but I was too busy cheering on Kurt Donahue from the game before, and time got away from me when I was. It's just one of those things. It seems to be if you don't put your bets on, they get up. Okay, so let's have a look at the results anyway. It was 10 tries to 3. Bailey, Bentley, Harpe, Tallis Duncan, and Lachlan Hubner went over for South. Ezra Mann twice, Katoni Staggs twice, Dean Mariner twice, Ben Tolte. Well, we wouldn't have had him, but he's only had a couple of runs and he had a really good match. Reece Walsh had a blinder, I felt, and Jack Grabowski from a little kick through from Reynolds, who had a fantastic game. Fantastic game. All right, let's have a look at the Reynolds got 10 from 10 as well. That's an outstanding kicking effort. Katoni Staggs, for mine, was really the man of the match. But you could have given it to several players, and Cobbo had a beauty too, back on the wing. The possession here, that don't get too carried away with the Broncos, but I like the way they played because they're going to need to play like that against the really good sides. I mean, South were virtually fielding a Jersey Flegg side. They've had so many severe injuries to vital areas right across the park. So it was a miracle they didn't get beaten by 100, honestly. But anyway, the possession rate here was 53 to 47 to the Broncos. And I'm just looking down here. The top tackler was Ben Hunt, 32. That's who we stood out for a try, but he's just taking his time to get back into the swing of things. He's been off on the sideline for too long. And Jai Arrow, outstanding in defence as usual, 36 tackles for South. Most run meters, Jordan Ricky, he had a big game, 231. There was an unfortunate injury as well to Willison. He broke his arm, I think it was in the second half. But in any case, yeah, he's going to be out for at least 6 weeks. So unless the Broncos get deep into the semi-finals, we may not be seeing Willison again. I mean, being a hard-running forward and doing a lot of defence as well, you don't want a broken forearm and unless you're going to plaster it up. I know, remembering Big Mel Meninga always had that forearm because he broke it a couple of times during his career. He always had it strapped up, so we might see him in the semi-finals. Now that's if Broncos can keep on playing as good as what they did in this game. Most line breaks, Katoni Staggs 2, and Jai Gray had a pretty good game as well. He had 1. Let's go across to the team stats. They'll be pretty alarming for South, I'd imagine, but what can the Supercoach do? Honestly, he's just had the worst injuries South out of all the teams, closely followed by the Warriors and Dolphins, I reckon, out of all the injured sides, I think, and then possibly Canterbury after that. You can work it out. Manly's had a couple of significant ones too. But let's have a look here. They were awful. We'll talk about them in a minute. Let's have a look at the possession rate here. It was 53% for the Broncos, 47 for South. Time of possession, 27 to 25 Broncos. Completion rate, 78% Broncos, 76 for South. So surprisingly, they did it right there. All runs meters, wow, an extra 600 metres there for Broncos. Post-contact metres were fairly the same, another 200. Line breaks 10 to Broncos, 3 to South. Tackle breaks here, 44 to the Broncos. Yeah, that's severely alarming. And only 26 tackle breaks from South. Average set distance, 40 metres there for Broncos and only 30 for South. Kick return metres, phenomenal, 300 for Broncos and 155 for South. Getting down to the crux here, the kicking, an extra 100-metre kicking there from the Bronx. Kick defusal, 62% under the bomb and under the kicks there for the Broncos, and 67, surprisingly higher there for South. Effective tackles, 91% effective tackles for the Broncos and only 85% to South. Tackles made, 325 to South and only 305 for the Broncos. Missed tackles, 44, South, 26 Broncos. Intercepts, surprisingly, 3 to South. They're always trying to go for those intercepts, aren't they, including Alex Johnson. Errors here in the negative play, not good for both. 13 for Broncos and 12 for South. Penalties conceded 6 to 3 for the Broncos there. And ruck infringements, a lot for South, 5 over 3. So what else can you say is South will be trying to rebuild next year. And they're going to be fighting for their lives not to get the wooden spoon there. But it's looking fairly obvious at this stage. especially the way the Titans are playing. And we'll get to that game shortly. That was an incredible game. All right, let's move across to the next match. And in fact, that was the Titans versus Panthers. What a freaking game. If you don't like NRL after this game, shame. To me, it was a shame that they lost the Titans. It was unbelievable. But it came down to a bit of Cleary magic and that Penrith climbing, what is it now, 8 straight victories? Climbing their way nearly into the top 4. Wow, watch out. We've been warning about this for the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're on a roll. They're on a big run. And that kick for Cleary to take the game into extra time or golden point was so freakish. Shame that they didn't have – everyone was so gassed at that stage. It was that far back on the 40-metre. No one could charge that down, and it sailed between the posts. A beautiful kick. But anyway, let's have a look at these stats and what have you. In the end, it was, as I said, golden point victory, but it went to a try, unfortunately, to Penrith. But for you Panthers fans, it was very fortunate. 30-26. The try scorers were Brian Kelly for Gold Coast. Jaden Campbell, wow, was a phenomenal charge down. Sam Verrills, he's always been one of my favourite players for the Gold Coast. He's only just come back as well. And he had a big game last week. Philip Sami went over twice in the 66th and 73rd, but he did have to go for HIA at one stage after that heavy tackle, which resulted in his first disallowed try. Thomas Jenkins went over from a nice catch. Dylan Edwards sailed through the gap. Blaze Talagi, same thing, off a kick. Casey McLean sailed through another gap of poor defence. And Blaze Talagi went over again in the to win the golden point try. It was 4 conversions for Cleary, over 3 out of 5 there for Jaden Campbell. And this is the controversy. There was a water boy for Penrith. I think he ran in front of Jaden Campbell. I haven't heard anything about it. He should be fined massively. And I said it to Scotty, because of the vital importance of that kick should have been allowed to be had again. Scotty thinks it should have been held from in front. And I think he should have just had 2 shots at that goal, because that was really poor sportsmanship there from the waterman or trainer of the Penrith Panthers. Really, really sad. Okay, let's have a look at the team stats. See, I would imagine it'd be fairly even in the end, but in the first half, because at halftime it was 24-0 to the Panthers. Who would have thought that they were going to come back the way they did? The Titans was an amazing comeback, probably one of the best we've seen in the NRL 22 rounds. Okay, let's have a look here. Completion rate, 75% to the Panthers and 89% for the Gold Coast Titans there. All runs meters, another 100 to the Titans over Penrith. Post-contact meters, wow, an extra 90 there to the Titans. Line break 6-5 to the Titans. They had a good stats going their way. Tackle breaks 46 Titans over 26 to the Panthers. That's interesting. Average set distance was 38 metres there for the Panthers and 39 for the Titans. Wow, these stats are a little bit misleading. Obviously, they're leaning more towards the mad comeback from 24-0 down. Kick return meters here, though, this is the big difference. 205 to only 156. 205 to Penrith, 156 to Titans. Let's have a look here. The passes, fairly even across the board. So we'll go into the kicking. The kicks fairly even, but the kick diffusal is very important. 56% kick diffusal of the Panthers, 73 very good under the Bombers there for the Gold Coast Titans. Grubbers 4 from the Gold Coast Titans and only 1 from Panthers. The tackles made here, the effective tackles, 87% Panthers, 92% Gold Coast. Missed tackles here, very surprisingly bad for the Panthers. 46 missed tackles and only 25 to the Gold Coast. Wow, these stats are a little bit skew if. You would honestly think Gold Coast won this match on those stats. Ineffective tackles, 16 Panthers and only 8 ineffective tackles for Gold Coast. Errors, 11 Panthers, 8 Titans. Wow. There's a few things there that Coach Cleary has to clear up. Boom, boom. Ruck infringements 4-2 to the Panthers. That's all you really need to know. It wasn't an entertaining match, and it was one of the better matches that was held up in the Gold Coast, where it was fairly dry. So that's what I've really got laboured down with, was all the wet conditions that most of the games were played in Sydney. It was just a quagmire, whatever game it was. And if you look at the picture that I used for this program, episode 40, you'll see how heavy that rain was in the Eastern Manly game as we closed towards half-time. Okay, going on to the next match, it was a very, very close one, but it was a 6-point victory to St George. Not an upset for some. And for Canberra, I can't remember how many they were going for straight. Was it 10? But anyway, or the 11th? No, it's yeah, I can't. It was one of those anyway. But anyway, let's have a look at the top tacklers here. Damien Cook, yet again, he's outstanding in defence, 44. Tom Starling, another great defender for Canberra, 49. Most run meters. Moses Suli, he had a big, big game, 183. Just couldn't break out of those last ditch tackles. And Matthew Timoko, who also scored 2 tries, 166. Most line breaks, Timoko 2, which resulted in both of those tries. One was easy as you like, and the other one was Matthew Fionney. And it looks as though if we go across to the team stats, we'll find out some more interesting facts. Completion rate here, 64% to the Canberra Raiders, 83%. Ooh, St George. That's a big, big stat against Canberra there. St George did they are a good wet weather football team, unlike Canterbury, who are something like none from 4 in the wet. And Sharks, will go over that before we leave, a fairly good wet weather team as well. But anyway, this is the St George and Canberra game, and the all runs meters. There's an extra 300 there to St George. Post contact meters, an extra 60 to St George. Line breaks 2 apiece. Tackle breaks 21 to St George, and only 13 to Canberra. Yeah, they just didn't. They looked a bit off colour, Canberra, and St George stood up. And after the last week's loss, I thought they were virtually gone from. But with the results over the weekend, they've got a very small chance of getting into the 8. They have to virtually not make a mistake from here on in for the last 5 rounds. Average set distance. It looks like an extra metre there to St George. Kick return meters, 167 to St George over 144 for Canberra. Let's have a look here. The kick diffusal, it was 50% to Canberra and 50% to St George. Bombs 3 each. Defence, 92% effective tackles for Canberra and 92% for St George. It was close in the stats pretty much all the way through here. Errors, a little bit more to Canberra there, 14-10 over St George. Penalties conceded 7 apiece, and that's all she really wrote. So going forward, Canberra need to get back on track, and St George need to keep on winning. That's all we can really say about that match. I thought the kicking game into that horrible wind, that wind was horrendous. It was a great kicking game from the coach's son, Flanagan. Kyle Flanagan had a great kicking game. All right, let's move on to the next match, and that was in torrential conditions as well. Manly did not fare too well in this match. They lost 20 points to 4. And Tolutau Kohler was one of our try scorers, so he got us a collect straight away with Billy Smith, another one of our standouts, but we failed to get the other 2 legs of the 3-leg parlay and the other 2-leg parlays with Angus Crichton going. That was one of the tries of the season, with Sam Walker in the middle of the play on the last tackle, putting a kick in, and Angus Crichton somehow getting the ball and going over for East, which pretty much sealed the deal, especially when Egan Butcher went over. It was all shut the gates at the 49th minute. Manly just could not hold the ball. Sam Walker's kicking game just destroyed them as far as I'm concerned. At halftime, it was 12-4 to the Roosters, and they never looked like losing this match. Let's have a look here at the team stats. I'll just go back for a second and look at the top tacklers here. Team stats. Let's go back to the other one. Player stats. Most tackles, 42. Takiaho and Connor Watson, 42 to Takiaho and Connor Watson, 36. Most run meters here was Robert Toyer, 167, and Takiaho, 161. He had a fairly big game. Most line breaks here, 1 to Tedesco and 1 to Jason Saab. The defence was very good for East. I think they've got a chance of getting in that 8 and ruffling a few feathers anyway. Let's get over to the next page, the team stats. Completion rate here, 75% to the Roosters, 67 to Manly. Yeah, that's a bad stat towards them. Line breaks 2-1 to Manly. Tackle breaks 39 to 20 for the Roosters. And let's have a look here. Total passes, 275. Total passes to Manly. They were throwing it around, but a lot of the times it didn't end up in a drop ball, and only 218 there for the Roosters. The kicks, 20 to 18 for Manly with DCE. Nothing was that effective. Kick defuse was 64% to Manly, 50% to the Roosters. Defence, 91%. There's one of your biggest stats there. 91% effective tackles for the Roosters and 88 there to Manly. Ineffective tackles, 14 to 8 to the Roosters, and missed tackles, a lot more to Manly here, 39 to 20, and tackles made 330 as opposed to Roosters 356. Geez, they're really showing their fitness there, the Roosters. I thought they were just too good for Manly, and that was a tough ask of them to go to 4 Pines Park or the old Brookie and win so convincingly. Don't know how going forward for Manly. Olakau'atu has gone for the season. He's got to have the end of year shoulder reconstruction, so their chances are looking highly unlikely at this stage. Even though they've got a small skerrick of a chance of getting in there, we don't know what their draw is for the rest of the season, but Nonetheless, I think Roosters are going forward where Manly is stagnant. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just need to have a quick toilet break and we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Thank you. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. When you've got to go, sometimes you've got to go. Okay, so we just finished with the Roosters and the Eagles game. Let's move this a little bit closer. And the next match, this was the entertaining game for the Tigers. 28 defeating Bulldogs 14. A big shout out there to Adam and Mr. Omar, the boys from Bankstown there, and a big hello next door to Mr. Bishal Barakaki. Hopefully you're doing well today too, mate. All right, big shout out to Stephen Lammy as well. I guess with that, you being a Mad Raiders fan, sometimes you need a loss to shape yourself back into reality because it's such a hard competition. You can get carried away, and just a good loss, if you can learn from it, it's going to be good for these sides like Canberra going forward. And now they're in a big race with Melbourne for the minor premiership, no doubt about it. Bulldogs, they don't really want to keep on losing here. They don't, because already they've shifted back to third position and there's not enough rounds left if they drop another game. 28-14 was an outstanding game for Dewey. The thing that really, really killed me, we had everything leading into Dewey with the Penrith versus the Tigers match, and this week we let him go. Sometimes damned if you do, damned if you don't, and we were damned because we didn't have Dewey. He had an outstanding match. He virtually ran rings around the Bulldogs. The handling was horrible for Bulldogs. They got something like 0 from 4 in the wet. They've even been thrashed by the Dolphins in the wet. They are not a good wet weather football side. If I was Serraldo, I'd be praying for mainly dry weather through the spring in the playoffs, I tell you. It was awful. But anyway, let's click on the try scorers here. Gerald Skilton went over twice. And ironically, we had him the week before as well. And Jareem Buller was one of our collects there. And Jacob Preston, we had him put in there, but we didn't have Kiraz. I can't catch Kiraz. And Josh Curran, I chucked in Kurt Mann and threw out Josh Curran. So you work it out. Josh Curran went over in the dying seconds. Samuel Afinu went over in the 70th for the Tigers, and Adam Dewey with that amazing solo try, 32 at the 32nd minute. Dewey's kicks were 3 from 5 and only 1 from 3, but the weather conditions were horrendous. It's a miracle they got that much. Steve Crichton got 1 from 3. Not a good game from Crichton. Unfortunately, we did have Crichton as our standout, and to me, looking at normal speed, that try should have been given. You can pick it apart all you like, but because they couldn't find enough video evidence, they went along with the no try decision from the referee. I thought it was a try every given day of the week, but it's cost us a lot of money, that try. Steve Crichton, for mine, definitely went over. Whether it would have changed what happened in the match, who knows? But anyway, let's have a look at the stats and see who the top tacklers were here. It was Terrell May with 40, another work dog, and Max King with 34. Terrell May for the Tigers and Max King for the Dogs, they're 34. Most run meters, Adam Dewey, of course, 167, and Jacob Kiraz, 170, had a very solid game. Most line breaks, Kiraz 1 and Skelton 1. Okay, team stats here. Completion rate, Canterbury was awful, 67% completion rate, and only 79 here to 79, a lot more there for the Tigers. Time of possession, 26 minutes over 24 for the Tigers, over the Canterbury, and attack, all runs meters, surprisingly, the Bulldogs ran another 50 all-run meters. Post-contact meters, 389, very, very even, and 391 for the 391 for the Tigers, 389 for the Dogs. Line breaks 4-3 to the Dogs. Tackle breaks 29, the Dogs, 30 to the Tigers. Coach Ciraldo really needs to have a look at this side and the way they defended. They were being carved up all over the place. But, Tigers aren't a bad side. They haven't been a bad side all year. Average set distance, 32 metres there, over 28 of the Tigers and 32 to the Bulldogs. Kicking metres, fairly even, another 40 metres there to the Dogs. And that's with Burton. He didn't do any of his massive spiral punts. I guess it was the weather conditions that didn't help. Looking at the kick defusal, 80% kick defusal for the Tigers, and this is so poor. Only 25% kick defusal for Bulldogs. Well, Ciraldo needs to get that and rubber stamp it in his book of what they need to do to diffuse the bombs and the kicks. That's a horrendous statistic there. Defence, 89% effective tackles to the Bulldogs, 87, fairly high there for the Tigers. 322, well, that gassed them in the end, didn't it? Canterbury, 322 and only 290 needed for the Tigers. Missed tackles, 30 for the Dogs and 29 to the Tigers. Ineffective tackles, 13 Tigers, 9 the Bulldogs. But they were gassed, the amount of defence that they had to do. Their handling errors were disgraceful. And here it is here. Negative players, errors, 13 Canterbury and only 9 for the Tigers. Penalties conceded, 8-7 to the Dogs. And that's all you really need to know. I won't be backing or tipping the Dogs under any wet conditions in the future. They are not mudlarks, as they would say in racing. But congratulations, Benji Marshall. Very, very happy for you. You won't be getting the wooden spoon this year, for the fourth year in a row. So congratulations. This side is going onwards and upwards. Hopefully you don't lose too many by the end of next year. If everything went your way and certain results happened to go your way, then they'd have to still win every match to be mathematically possible of skimming into the 8, but I doubt it. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're out of the danger spot anyway. Let's put it that way. Let's go on to the next match before we get laboured down too much. And the next match was the last match that we'll be covering, and we'll be having a quick look at the ladder. It was Cronulla 32, destroying the Cowboys 12. I reckon there's going to be some shocking stats here against the Cowboys and some ordinary ones for Cronulla as well. I wasn't overly impressed with Cronulla being at their home ground, but Cowboys were freaking awful. I saw the press conference and it wasn't good. I'm sure they got blasted in the press in their change room after the press conference by Coach Payton there. So let's have a look at that. It was Braden. Oh, geez, it makes me sick. I've had Braden Trindle at least every second anytime try score every second week, and then I let him go because he doesn't score. As soon as I let him go, he scores. So he went over in the 3rd minute, and he was a good price too. Adam Fanua-Blake, I can't catch him this year. 16-minute Ronaldo Mulatalo, who was long odds on to score. 29 and 34th minute. Cameron McGuinness, well, it's like picking a needle in a haystack when he's going to go over, but it was a good try, close to the line, on the burst, in the 60th minute, went over at good odds. Griffin Neen, 46, I wouldn't have had him, and Braden Burns, 77. Well, we didn't. So we got hammered there with the anytime try scorers. Luckily, we did all right in the previous match with the West Tigers and the Dogs match, but it didn't all fall our way either. But let's have a look at the top tacklers here for Cronulla and Cowboys. It won't go any forward for me. Blake Brayley, 48 here, most tackles, 57 to Harrison Edwards. Blake Brayley for the Cronulla Sharks, 57 to Harrison Edwards. That's a phenomenal effort. William Kennedy, 186. Something I don't like about Will Kennedy's game, it was clear down the sideline there on the left, and he had a play on his inside and a play on his outside and decided to go himself. I think they would have scored had he released it. He did that to Britton Nakora recently, hogging the ball, and it's something I really don't like about William Kennedy's game. Not my favourite player. He's good, but he needs to play as more of a team player as far as I'm concerned, in my honest opinion. 2 most line breaks there for Ronaldo Mulatalo and 1 Robert Darby. Okay, let's have a look here. Player stats, team stats is the one we want. Time of possession, 27 minutes, both of them. Completion rate, 68% Cowboys, surprisingly higher than what I thought. 79% to Cronulla. All runs of metres, an extra 600 metres there to Cronulla. Post-contact metres, 549 over 488 for the Cowboys. Cronulla there. Line breaks, really disgraceful for the Cowboys. 7-1 to the Cronulla Sharks. Tackle breaks, 40 tackle breaks for Cronulla. It's probably all in the first half, and 38 to the Cowboys. They came back a little bit, but they were still being whacked and towed up. Pretty much 6 more metres, the average set distance there for the Sharks. Kick return metres, wow. Not a good game there for the Cowboys. Only 98 kick return metres for the Cowboys, 226 for Cronulla. Oh, dear, oh dear, some really bad stats towards the Cowboys here. Total passes, there's not much in that stat. The kicking, the kick defusal, they had a bigger kicking game, Cronulla, an extra 100 metres. Let's have a look at the kick defusal, 46% to the Sharks, 6 bombs to 4, and 56, a little bit more there, a defusal from the Cowboys. Effective tackles, 87% to Cronulla and 89% to the Cowboys. That's a little bit misleading. Tackles made, an extra 40 tackles made for the Cowboys. Missed tackles here, 40 over 38, 40 to the Cowboys, 38 to Cronulla. Ineffective tackles, surprisingly, Cronulla 12 and Cowboys 9, but they couldn't complete with tries across the line. So pretty good scrambling defence from Cronulla. Errors here in negative play, 13 to Cronulla, 14 to the Cowboys. Penalties conceded, very ill discipline, 7-3 in favour of the Cowboys. They're not good discipline. Ruck infringements, 2-3 for Cronulla. And one sin bin to the Cowboys, which was at Dearden, who had blood all over his face. Going forward, I'm not seeing a Cronulla side that can do too much damage in the semi-finals. Let's see over the next 5 weeks. I may change my mind, but I need to see more against the top sides if I'm going to change my mind about Cronulla. I'm not convinced at this stage. And Cowboys, I don't know. They're too hot and cold for mine, and they're unbelievable and nearly unbeatable up in Townsville, but they're not good travellers at this stage. And now they've got it all to do. That was not a game that they really needed to lose. Let's have a quick look at the ladder, and then we'll call it quits for the night, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. And we'll have a quick look at the ladder here. Sorry about my little toilet break, a little halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, but these things happen. And we've still got the program done and dusted, literally. The ladder here. So it's Raiders still up on top with 36 points. I think they've got another bye to go. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they're on 36 points, 2 points clear of the Storm in second, Melbourne Storm in second on 34. Then you have Bulldogs on the same 34 in third position, with Storm with a better for and against. Warriors 4 points behind the top three here, 4 points behind Bulldogs on 30. So that was not a game that they needed to lose, that one where we thought they had it won against the Dolphins. They really needed to win it. But, geez, they've been destroyed with injuries, just like the Dolphins. So in fourth position on 30 points are Warriors. Panthers are 1 point behind the Warriors in fifth position. That is awfully dangerous. Now, that's 8 straight, isn't it, now, for the Panthers? Broncos, only 1 point behind the Panthers in sixth position. They're the sides for mine. Those ones there, Storm, Bulldogs, Warriors, Panthers, and Broncos, they're the ones for mine that are going to be playing semi-final football. And that's for mine at this stage. I'm really interested to see if any of the battling sides like Sharks, Dolphins, Roosters, Seagulls and Dragons can get into the 8. But I don't think they're going to be really scraping any of the paint off the walls over those top 6 sides. In seventh, Sharks equal, but on a worse for and against, 28. And they've played that extra game, the Sharks. So then you have in 8th position on 26 by themselves, the Dolphins after that win. They round out the top 8 with 26, 2 points back to Roosters in 9th on 24. Also on 24 in 10th, Sea Eagles. And then you have the Dragons in 11th, but they're 4 points behind Seagulls. That's the little ding for these sides back from 11th onwards. That 4 point buffer between Dolphins, Roosters, and Seagulls, as opposed to the Dragons. There's not many, not much chance for error. And even if they do win every other match, the other side's just in front of them. They only have to win 3 or 4 of their last 5. So it could still shuffle up, but Dragons are going to need a miracle to get into the top 8 for mine, including West Tigers, who are equal on 20 points, but in 12th. Cowboys 1 point behind them. I think that loss to Cronulla's really cost them dearly. 1 point behind the Tigers in 13th position, and Knights, Eels, Titans, Rabbitohs are all finished for the year, and they are 1 point behind the Tigers, the Cowboys, 1 point Knights behind the Cowboys in 13th. In 15th, the Eels equal to the Knights, but on a worse point against, 2 points back to the Titans, and Rabbitohs equal last, but they've been thrashed so many times with half a side. They are stone motherless last in 17th, and it looks like a wooden spoon for them, Eels or Titans. I think the Knights have got a pretty good chance of getting the wooden spoon as well, for mine personally, and I'm a massive Knights fan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Hopefully on Thursday, it's drier weather, and I'm glad that you listened to me and you halved most of your bets. We had an up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, and some of those players just did not fire a shot, especially for Canterbury in the wet, and there was a couple of strange results there. But congratulations to West Tigers. Congratulations to Peter Connors on scoring 3 massive points over Scotty and myself, and onwards and upwards for him, as he's only 7 points off the lead here, which is Scotty 3 points in front of yours truly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. See you on Thursday. Best of luck, and let's pray for sunny weather for the rest of the week, and we'll get some biggies back. We didn't have too much of a loss for the entire weekend. At one stage, we were $20 in front. I think we ended up about $30 behind for the weekend. Not too bad, considering the conditions were that bad, but luckily we halved our bets because of those horrendous conditions. All right, Axel Phillips from Every Point's a Winner. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you. And the more you do that, the more popular the program gets. Don't forget, Scotty and myself will be calling some of the playoffs and the semi-finals here on Every Point's a Winner from the live to a free-to-air live TV. Not an easy task, but we love doing it for you, and it's very exciting, and we're going to try and beat some of our records anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, from Axel Phillips, it's bye for now.